right, and here we go. The Stronger Together podcast. It's back in action, and we are extremely excited. We had last few episodes, we were down in New Orleans. We were talking to some amazing authors and educators as part of FETC, and now we have a little bit of a hiatus as we're going to bring in some impactful educators from around the globe. And then I'll be back in Michigan to be podcasting live at the McCall, the Michigan State Tech event. And as we loop back, one of the books that I was able to pick up before FETC, and then there's a lot going on, was a book. I'm not even going to get too deep into it because I want the author to come on and talk about it, but really just talks about better. And the journey to get there was what was impressive to me. So one of the things I want to do is officially, for our first 2023 live guest here, we have Monte Syrie, all the way from the state of Washington, rocking his Codebreaker hat. Welcome in.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you.
Awesome. So I've had an opportunity to get a chance to see your work, to meet you a few different times, never in person yet, but we'll make that happen.
Yes,
but
we
for
will.
those who don't know who you are in your current role in education, would love for you to share that.
Yeah, I find myself in the middle of my 27th year in public education. I am currently teaching 9th and 10th grade ELA at Cheney High School here in Cheney, Washington. For me, once upon a time, I thought about maybe going the administrative route and was even, most of the way there. And finally decided, that I was just going to stay in the classroom. And I'm so glad I did, because had I not stayed there, Matt, I'm not sure that I would be here with you today in the same capacity that I am. And I'm glad I decided to stay because, it was at year 20 when I kind of made that decision, and staying in the classroom was maybe the better, pun intended, thing that I did in my career, because I feel like in the last 7 years, I really have learned more about myself as an educator, and come to see, our work differently than I ever had before. And that was kind of the impetus for better, actually, which began as my blog, let'schangeeducation.com. And, I just started blogging every day, and I ended up doing it for 5 years with Project 180. And I'm so glad that I did, because it's been the richest experience of my career. So that's kind of where I am today. I've had experience both teaching middle school and high school, but primarily I've been at the high school for the majority of my career.
Awesome. So Daphne is with us live amongst a few guests. She's out in Iowa right
Hi,
now.
Daph.
So, hey, Daph, what's going on? So you kind of just went through a ton of things right there that I want to unpack. You just probably laid out the whole agenda for what we're going to talk about. So you shared that you stayed in the role of teacher and a classroom educator, and then you started this website. Check it out down below, let'schangeeducation.com. And you briefly kind of just were like, and I blogged every day for 5 years.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about a few things? One, what do you mean by that?
Okay.
Two, the stamina to do that and what you learned from that about yourself.
Yeah. So in year 20, I found myself about this time of year, actually, doing an independent learning project with my kiddos. And one of my kiddos,
these are high school students?
These are my high school kids. Yeah. At the time, a group of sophomores, and we were doing an independent learning project. And one of my kiddos, Megan Lavin, kind of challenged me on the spot and said, "Hey, you're doing this with us, right?" And I was like, "Sure, Meg." And I talk about this in the book. But I figured, heck, I model most things that I do for my kiddos, and I try to walk my walk or walk my talk. And so I jumped in, and I didn't really know what to do. And I'd always wanted to blog. And so I looked into that as my independent learning project, learned a little bit about it. Didn't even really know what a blog was, if I'm being honest, at the time. I mean, I'd heard of them, but I didn't really know,
Sure.
what that meant. And even starting it, I had really no idea what I would write about. And, as they say, write what you know. And, I'd been in the classroom for 20 years, so I decided just to start writing about education. Never in a million did I have in mind that I would go on to, blog for now what's been 7 years. But with Project 180, which actually began the second year of my blogging, or the second after the half a year, I decided that I was going to start blogging every day. And just to kind of walk my talk in terms of doing reflecting and doing better. And Project 180 was born. And I ended up blogging every morning for 5 years. And it was the most introspective, reflective, exhilarating but exhausting time in my career. And as I look back now, I think, how did I sustain that? But I did, and every morning I just wake up. I had my wife and I just talked about this morning. I had no idea most days what I was going to write about. And so where I found myself is reflecting on the day before in my classroom and kind of the work we were doing, I was doing with my kids. And that just created my daily content, if you will. And I kind of got into a stride, and it kind of became an addiction, as much as anything. And and then very fortuitously, Brian Aspinall from Codebreaker contacted me one December or 2 years ago and said, "Hey, Monty, love to turn Project 180 into a book." I really didn't have much of an idea of what that would look like at the time, and but it all came together, and here we are today. So
yeah, we're definitely gonna touch on the book, but I got two more questions about
yeah,
the blogging experience and
yeah,
working with students, because one of the things that we talk a lot about, and I just shared this in the event that actually Daphne, Brian, myself were at with our fourth author, Christine, for Disrupt the Status Quo, is
yeah,
that students learn for someone.
yeah.
Now, and you blogging every day, how did that change the environment in the classroom?
Well, I felt like, because it was public, I felt like I was holding myself to a higher degree of accountability than I ever had before. And I always imagined my kids being my audience.
Hmm.
Yes, other educators, um, um, uh, joined my blog, subscribed to my blog, followed me on Twitter. But every morning I sat down, I believed I was writing for my kids, because, my first big audience were my former students who were following me on Facebook and other social media. I was first starting to put out my blog posts. And so not only was I writing for my kids who were currently in my classroom, but I was writing for every kid who had ever been in my classroom 20 years prior. And for me, that was an incredible honor, but it was also, I don't want to use the word burden, Matt. That it wasn't a burden, but it was something again that really made me want to be thoughtful about how I was conducting myself in the classroom, and always striving to chase that next better, and publishing my classroom. I've had I've had a few people over the years criticize my approach, and I'm just like, dude, I'm just trying to get better here, man. I'm just publishing my classroom every day. I don't see you publishing your classroom, but I was willing to do that, and I just felt like it was a real opportunity for me to give some folks on the outside some insight to the inside of what a classroom looked like. And it also held me accountable, because I knew my kids, both current and former, were checking in to see what I was doing, and that meant a lot to me.
Sure, and kind of tying a bow on this, if you say, so day one, blog one, to 5 years later, how
Mhm.
did you become a better teacher through that experience?
Um, wow. Holy cow. That's such a huge question, Matt. But I think I'm gonna simplify it into this. I think how I became a better teacher from day one to day, 900. Um, is that right? That can't be right. Yeah, that's right. Day 900, with 185 times a year. Yeah, or 5 years. Um, I was left with two guiding questions that I still consider to this day, every single day, every time I sit down and I plan for my kids, I work for my kids, and they are this: one, how can I create better learning experiences for my kids? And two, how can I create a better community for our classroom? And those two questions drive my work. And I think if not for doing the daily blogging that I did, and engaging in the reflection and the introspection that I did, I don't think I would have been able to distill it down to those two things, because really it just comes down to learning and community for me. And so all of my work is driven by that. And I'm not sure I knew that or understood that as well as I do now 6 years ago.
Yeah, and I think having that mindset and that grit to go through it is what we want for all of our teachers and all of our educators, our leaders. And you dropped a few words in there. Well, it's the same word over and over again, better.
Hmm.
And you talked about this Project 180 turned into a 1 year blog, turned into a 2 year blog, turned into a 5 year blog. It's now a book. And, better, a teacher's journey, Project to 180, book one. So you mentioned quickly, and we're going to go back into this, that you were approached and chatted similar to myself by Codebreaker EDU Brian Aspinall. So what was that initial conversation about building up to this project in this book?
Well, at first it was really kind of scary, to be honest. Because up to that point, I hadn't really had anyone to kind of drive me, other than my wife nudging me, of course, to get my poop in a scoop and get a book written. And so, it had been something that was in my mind, but I didn't really know how to get started. And because I didn't know how to get started, it was easy to put it off.
Sure.
And so Brian, and he and I have talked about this. He and Daphne and I have talked about this. The universe gave us a nudge, and Brian was the channel, if you will, for getting that to and through to me. And so really, I owe Brian so much, because he just basically said, without knowing it, said, dude, get your ass off the couch and get a book written here. And of course, Brian, he would never say it like that.
Oh,
He
he'd
would say,
absolutely
okay,
say
I'm
it like
thrilled by
that.
what you're
So
doing.
hold on, back up.
Yeah.
I know Brian, and he would absolutely say it like that.
Okay, fair enough. You know him better than I, and so all right, I had him pegged anyway. So he told me to get my ass off the couch and write a book, and I didn't know exactly what it was going to look like, and thank gosh, Daphne and he were there along the way, and gave me the grace to do it in my way, in my time, and better came of it. Because when I started, Matt, I had no idea that it was going to be the book Better. I had no idea it was going to take the form that it did. I just knew that we were going to take the content from my blog and try to package that into a book somehow. And so, Brian was the catalyst that I needed, and then he and Daphne were the support that I needed as I worked through. It took me 2 years to write the book, and I was so unrealistic. I told him, like, okay, I'll have it to you guys by June. This was in December, and it was 2 years later, not just 6 months later, that I had the book done. So thank gosh that they were authors themselves and understood the process, the creative process, and were very supportive. And it was important to me too, because it was my baby, and I wanted to let them know that. And Brian and Daphne both wanted it to still be my baby, and I appreciated that. And so could not have asked for a better publishing company to work with.
Yeah, no, and I have had very similar experiences when I met Brian a little over 2 years ago, and we had talked about very similar things about getting your voice out there and working with individuals. And I think one of the things that you said that I want to kind of go back to was that a big piece of it, the first book I wrote with Codebreaker was Power of Connections, and I had come from a publishing company that was incredibly strict, and I felt took my voice away. And I think that's where our initial kind of connection came from, of like how he worked with a different publishing company, I worked with one, and we were talking about making this happen. And Daphne, who I think is still here with us, she would call me every and give me some feedback, and I'd be like, yes, this is great. And then every time I tried to put my own voice in, I'd be like, is this okay? And it did, and it stayed in, and it led to now a 2.5 year friendship, a partnership now with X Factor and Codebreaker.
Yes.
And it's because we are able to really value individuality, as well as then keeping a larger team. So for those who are going to pick up the book and hear your voice, essentially, what does that mean to you? Like, what is your voice? What's your style? What is the reader going to take away from this book?
I hope what they take away from this book is that, I'm not a good teacher. I'm not a great teacher. I am just simply a better teacher. And this is what I mean by that, Matt. It's like, I am no different than every other teacher, across the nation, across the world, if you will. I am just a guy going to work every day, trying to do the best that he can for his kids, and he'll do the best that he can until he knows better. Well, this guy is always trying to find better, almost to the point where he makes himself dizzy, right? And so, when people what I hope that people find when they hear my voice is that they find themselves, because I'm trying to be the voice of teachers, and I think in his forward, Rick Wormelli said this, he's a teacher's teacher, and I really
Sure.
appreciated that, because that's what I want to be. I mean, of course, I want to be a student's teacher. I want to be that guy for my kids, but I also want to be that guy that people find believable, that people can relate to, that people find me, not as someone who has it figured out, but just as someone who's trying to figure it out and will continue to try to figure it out. As I say in the book, this book is for teachers. I wrote this for them, and I want it to resonate with them. And the early feedback's been that people are finding that it does resonate with them. And I want this to be our journey, not just Monte Syrie's journey. And it's like, and I even tell the people in the book that I hope by the time you're on page 6, you've already forgotten about my story. You're reflecting on your own story and your own journey, because that's what I want this book to be for you. I have the better builder questions at the end, because I want this to be a reflective, immersive experience for my reader. I want them thinking about their classroom. My classroom doesn't matter. Their classroom is the only classroom that matters. And that's how I want them to embrace the book. And I hope they are. And a few have told me that they are. So.
Yeah, no, and I for me, I liked the style. I like and this is a positive, the choppiness, where I can learn something and then go to a different topic, and
Yeah.
and then I find something entertaining. And I also, having the good fortune to work with Daphne myself, to have her build, the power of connections and then disrupt. It's visually stimulating and it's different. Like, talk about, for those of you who haven't picked up the book, the website is down below here, project180thebook.com. It'll take you right to the page. Grab a copy. And when you open it, right away, this is a different book. This is a different type of book. And when you saw it for the first time, what was your thought?
Daphne knows this. It was my beautiful book, and that's what I always wanted it to be. And, I don't know if I had formally or officially planted that seed, but in our early conversations, I told both Brian and Daphne, I want this book to be beautiful, and not only on the outside, but in the inside. And, and working with Daphne, thankfully we were able, I believe, to make it both. It is my beautiful book. I love this thing, man. I give it hugs all the time. It turned out exactly how I wanted it to, even though I didn't know what that was, if that makes sense. I knew it had to be a different, beautiful book. And with Daphne's expertise and hard work, we were able to make that happen. And so I'm forever in Daphne's debt. So I wanted it to be a different book. I didn't want it to be the same book that people pick up every time they pick up an educational book. And I wanted people to be able to jump into day 90 without any context, and having the whole book. It's just a teacher's experience. He wrapped it, he introduced it with 180 words, and he wrapped it up with 180 words. That's something I was really proud of too, if I may. By the time both books are done, I will have written it 180 words, exactly 180 words, exactly 180 times. And so that was a challenge for me, because, early on, Brian, Daphne, and I talked about, like, okay, all of these posts are available on your website, right? Like, people can go to my blog and read all the posts that are there. So what's going to make this different? What's going to make it more meaningful to people? And so for me, it was about, engaging in my reflective voice, as I like to do, setting it up, trying to remember where I was. And I feel like I captured it really well. This is where I was 5 years ago when I wrote this. This is where I am 5 years later now, writing this book. And it was a challenge to me to write that 180 words exactly 180 times. So, and Daphne really helped me with that.
Awesome. So you mentioned something really quickly. I'm going to bring your book back up here. Project 180, book 1. Does that mean there's more to come?
Yes.
So tell us what's next.
Well, book 2 is book 1 only covers years 1 through 3. So, as it turned out, book 2 is basically done. But I was over 100,000 words already.
That's a bit much, huh?
Well, yeah. I mean, this already ended up being 419 pages. And that's a fairly big book, and I don't think we'd want it any bigger than this. And so we kind of went back and forth. It was one book, it was 2 books, it was 1 book, and then I just finally felt like, hey guys, this has to be 2 books. And so we just went with the first 3 years and the summers between, and now we have years 4 and 5 coming, and then beyond better too. And so it'll be the years after the 5, because I've continued doing a number of things in education that I will happily and gladly and proudly share with folks in book 2. So
awesome. Well, I look forward to that. So when you look at the cover, besides that it's just aesthetically a really good looking, beautiful book, as you put it, but the B is lowercase. Tell me about
yes.
that.
Okay. Thank you for asking, actually, Matt. So I made B lowercase for the simple reason that that we're never done, right? And better is never done. And I feel like if I put a capital B on that, it suggests an end or a finish, and we're never finished. And I think too, and what I wanted it to be, and the reason I made the cover as simple as I did, it's a humble journey. I think it really has to be. Our work is humble human work, and I want people to understand that better is not emphatic. Better is just a simple acknowledgement and admission that our work is important, and because our work is so important, we strive every single day to do, reflect, and do better. And we just start again. And I believe that is the best model that we can be for each other, as both teachers and humans. And I believe that's the best model that we can be for our kids. And I have used the heck out of better, not the book, but I've used the heck out of the word better in my classroom. I'm so proud to be able to tell my kids, and I just tweeted this out a couple days ago it was actually one of my room messages. The worst that will ever happen in here, kiddos, is better. That is the worst. And really, it's the best that'll ever happen. All that we're going to do is work together to get better. That is our work. And I think when we simplify it as much as that, when we make it that lowercase b, that we're all just humans learning forward, I just think it's something that's easy for people to embrace. It's easy for me to talk about. It's easy for me to live in my personal and my professional life. We get better, and I believe that, Matt. And I wish I had spent less time worrying so much earlier in my career about being good and great. And I wish I had found better so much sooner, because I think it would have made my work even more authentic than I thought it was. I thought it was authentic. I thought that was the goal, to be good and great, but now humbly, my goal is just simply to be better.
I like that. And I think it encompasses the journey. And I think part of the cover is the journey, like a hike.
Yes.
And
Yep.
I think having that opportunity is something that I cherish too, as well as not taking that journey alone. And this book for me was about feeling a connection to other teachers, to you, to your work. And this is the last question I ask all of our guests, because for me, talking about power of connections and stronger together, it's about that collaboration as well in that journey to better. So what does stronger together mean to you in your work?
Oh boy. I think that if we are not using our work either as adult to adult or adult to kid or kid to kid, let's just be honest, human to human. If we are not using our work to connect with people, then we are missing the boat. And so when I think of stronger together, there's nothing more important in our work than making connections, because when we do make connections, we understand each other better, we work with each other better, and I think that leads perfectly into what you're talking about, is like, we're stronger together. We know this. So if we know this, then why aren't we making daily efforts to be more connected in our work with each other, with our kids? And I think the world needs a little connectedness too. I think the world needs a little more stronger together, and so I try to model that in my classroom as much as I possibly can. There's nothing more important than the connections that we're going to make in the amount of time that we're going to spend together. And I think of like our kids' experiences. At no other time in their life are they going to have an opportunity to connect with people than they do in the high school classroom, or in the public school classroom, not high school, in the K-12 classroom. That is the time when they're going to have an opportunity to connect with people, to spend time with people, a diverse group of people, and then they will at that, and no other time in their lives. And I think if we're not capitalizing on that, we're effing it up, man. We've got to do that. And so that's what I think of connections endure, right? So if we're stronger together and we're connected, that endures. It's not a 180-day thing. This is the rest of our life thing. We are connected to each other. We are connected for each other, and we are stronger together. And I know I went on and on and on, but
You're good.
I'm totally on board with what you're talking about, man. Together is connected, and connected is stronger.
Yeah, and I believe all of that. So for all of you watching, make sure to follow Monte right here. Check out his Twitter handle to see more about the book. It's the website scrolling down at the bottom. As you heard, book 2 will be coming out at some point, talking about following years and then better beyond. You have a lot going on, and it's great to meet you. I can't wait to meet you in person, and continued success in all that you do.
Okay. Thank you, Matt.
Thank you. Have a good day and a great start to your week, everybody.
Okay. Thank you.